Los efectos digitales habían cambiado el mundo del cine a principios de los años 90. Terminator 2 de James Cameron creó una revolución un año antes del Drácula de Coppola y un año después, Industrial Light and Magic, la compañía de efectos de George Lucas, creó el mundo jurásico con todas sus criaturas. Pero Coppola no quiso saber nada de efectos digitales para su Drácula. En coherencia con la adaptación de un mito del cine clásico, todos los efectos fueron ópticos. Miniaturas, sobreimpresiones, marionetas, matte paintings y, en algunos casos, los trucajes más mágicos, aquellos que se definen con la frase «la mano va más rápida que la vista» o «cómo engañar a tu propio ojo». Los efectos especiales de este Bram Stoker's Drácula son en ocasiones incluso narrativos. La ilusión acompaña al viaje y lo ilustra. La fantasía explica cosas con sus mejores recursos. Pura artesanía para crear un mundo de horror desatado, pero también de amor liberador. Y para redondear el conjunto, se contó con unos magníficos maquillajes de Greg Cannon que merecieron el Oscar y un deslumbrante vestuario a cargo de la directora artística japonesa Eiko Ishioka, brillante ganadora del Oscar al mejor vestuario por esta película.
Oh, I like these.
That's that option.
This is yeah, I can act in this.
In this place.
I can do an emotional love scene in this suit.
Yeah. They connect on this.
Astounding. There are no limits to science.
How can you call this science?
In the beginning of cinema, there were documentaries, basically people in the street photographing people, very crude narrative movies, and trick films. And these were films that were just meant to delight with bizarre effects, running film backwards, making jump cuts so that things appeared to appear out of nowhere, and all these types of things. I'm Roman Coppola. I was the visual effects and second unit director of Bram Stoker's Dracula. And it's odd that I'm here being interviewed in front of a green screen because this more modern technology is something that we did not use for the making of our picture, favoring instead old-fashioned movie tricks. Green screen has been used for many years, and sodium vapor, any kind of process by which you can pull out the background and superimpose another background in there. But we felt that wasn't in the spirit of these very early films, and so we chose not to use it. And it was just the challenge of doing it the hard way and the pleasure of knowing that was how it was done in the past, and we were staying in that tradition. The process of doing it is more involving, and I think the result shows.
God, let's just see that backwards.
To the convent.
100 being the same date as the birth of the cinema, and not only that, but the birth of the cinema coming out of magicians and illusions and basically magic tricks. I thought that I would not only make the film entirely in a false place, in a studio, but I would only use effects done as they would have been done in 1900.
I have not been getting what I've been asking for. I have been asking for
shadows and illusion and double impositions and imagination. And the big visual effects supervisors came on the film and told me how I had to do this stuff. And basically I saw that little by little they were, as they always do, leading me down the path to do it the way everybody else does it. I fired them and I hired my young son, I don't know that he was even 30 at the time, Roman Coppola, to be my collaborator. And in a sense I began to realize that it was only my own family who, you know, my son, whom I had raised in this style of adventure, who would be there shoulder to shoulder with me, you know, pushing it to be what I hoped it could be.
We started talking about how magic illusions could be used.
Candle.
Reverse photography, running the camera backwards, and then it was played forwards for an unusual effect. The old trick that the Marx Brothers use so nicely, in which you think there's a mirror, but in fact there's an empty space and there's a duplicate set beyond. Altering gravity, taking the camera, putting it on its side, putting the set a bit on its side, and then unusual things happen in which you feel that you are level, but in fact you're not, and so odd things happen.
Good. Marker.
The double exposure that we did with Harker walking through the castle, and we have some rats scampering across the ceiling, and that was done in camera with 2 passes in which we photographed the rat with the camera upside down, and we used a special matte box that blocked the film from being exposed. We rewound the film, flipped the camera over, and aligned this special matte box that we had, and then we were ready for Keanu Reeves to come in and do his walking by with the candles, and those 2 passes were exposed with one another.
They're going back to an old school of filmmaking. Old school in the sense of that, you know, Terminator 2 is all computer graphics, and this is like, you know, ropes and mirrors and, you know, that kind of hocus pocus, which is delightful.
Years ago in New York, my dad acquired a very old Pathé camera, which is one of the workhorse cameras of the early period of silent filmmaking.
We're going to shoot you today. We have time because it didn't rain. With the old Pathé camera, the original silent camera. The way Griffith and those guys, so that the whole sequence when it starts will look like that. That's what I want to do. A fast walk. Da 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 dum dum dum. But I like it when it varies a little bit, you know, so you get the. I want it to. If you do it too good, then it looks like Panavision.
Walking, keep walking.
How'd he do? Did he say?
What he's doing, he's singing to himself. Right?
That's the way they did it.
Yeah,
It's
he's singing to himself.
what they did.
Great.
So the movie was based on several innovative, risky ideas. That all the effects would be done in camera and not with the benefit of modern computer or optical printer technology. We would try to do our own naive effects and that would give the film almost more of a mythical soul. In the book of Dracula, the coachman literally reaches out. Jonathan Harker's standing 15 feet away, and the coachman's able just to reach out and take him by the shoulder and put him in the coach. I guess today they would achieve that with a digital effect. You know, they'll basically sort of animate it and then do it. And, you know, I love that image from the book, and I wasn't getting it, and so I put my foot down and said, let's think of a way to do this. And ultimately, we did come up with a solution live, which was that the coachman was really on a kind of camera crane, although you couldn't tell. And so when he reached out towards Jonathan Harker, the crane actually moved him, so the arm just kept going, and he was able to get him and put him in the coach. Now that's a moment. I mean, maybe some people notice, well, that was very peculiar. How did they do that? Or not. I don't think it's important that each of these textures or colors are really seen for what they are and how they were done, but they contribute to the overall strangeness, the idea that you're entering into an unusual world.
Researching Dracula, I discovered the work of Mario Bava. A film like Black Sunday has some neat visual tricks, and there's a particular scene of the carriage ride which we were inspired by. We basically used tree branches that were just being held by grips, passing them by the windows and rocking the carriage. I mean, these are all very old-time movie tricks, but we did it in a slightly more theatrical fashion. And there's a lightning strike, which was in fact a illuminated frame with a kind of claw-shaped lightning that was right there on the soundstage, and it looks kind of fake, but wonderfully so.
You don't judge whether, the fact that I worked so hard to get this one little thing, and maybe it'll turn out to be great. Because as we know, in movies, sometimes just a simple moment is something that, or a simple line, is something that people just constantly refer to. I mean, who would have known that leave the gun, take the cannoli, which was an afterthought, because my father used to bring a box of cannoli when I was a kid. Who would know that anybody would remember that line? But you don't, and you don't know equally moments or illusions or effects, which will really be the one.
Nice, hold it.
So we did a lot of noodling around and testing with video cameras, and I shot an early film test exploring some front projection. So the spirit of our preparation period was very much a workshop, looking for ideas, seeing what stuck. And in the case of that test I did of a skull projecting onto a face, we developed the idea of the map being projected onto Harker's face. So these are all little steps in a process of finding the look and ways that the effects could be integrated into the story.
We see the peacocks in the eye of a feather. It becomes a train tunnel.
The train sequence was heavily boarded, and we basically laid everything out on the table, and we welded it all together to create a kind of flowing series of overlapping pieces that passed through the peacock feather, through the tunnel, and the train making its journey through Transylvania.
As he's going along, he's reading his journal. The journal in the bottom half of the frame, and the train, and it looks like it's traveling on top of the book. Say this is the camera, and the train was about 20 feet away from us. And then the book was put literally, because it was a small book, it was a real journal. The book was put literally right next to the lens. To be able to get the shadow onto a little book like this wasn't gonna work. So Gene, my father, decided, well, what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to recreate the book 20 feet away. And then use the same train, put one light up, make a shadow of the smoke, and make it go across the book. And I'm sitting here going, well, that's gonna have to be like a 20-foot wide book. And Gene says, well, okay.
The train sequences, there's so many things going on. The complications, I think we had to deliver 22 seconds worth in order, which is long for this type of situation, particularly for traveling right to left. It also involved a very small scale miniature of the train. We had a mountain range that was fixed, but the sky was only 3 feet behind it. And in front of that, rocks and some smaller trees that moved at a very slow rate. And then there was a middle ground that moved a little faster. And then the immediate foreground outside the train car moved very fast. The camera was on another track right in front of it that moved from left to right. And the set in front of us was moving from right to left. And that gave us the speed distance. And it was a 2-pass shot. So in the film, it's not sent to the lab to be developed. We had to back it up, turn all the lights out, and that there was like a movie screen. And then we projected on that sky a plate of Dracula's eyes that Roman had shot. There was a mock-up of the interior of the train car on tires or springs that Keanu sat in. And behind it, again, is like a movie screen, but it's known as a rear projection screen because you're projecting the image from behind rather than in front. When you see that in the theater, what you're seeing there all was done together. The background and the foreground was done together.
My friend, welcome to the Carpathians. I am anxiously expecting you.
It was a big challenge, and I love doing these other type techniques that every year goes by now, less and less are done, and I'm a hands-on kind of guy, and it's just much more fun than, holding a mouse or...
The entire film was shot, with very few exceptions, inside the stages of the MGM lot. And that was the condition of the shoot. We're shooting everything on the stages, so we had to be clever about how to give it an expansiveness, and that was why we chose to do forced perspective. Forced perspective comes from the principle that the camera has one eye, which is the lens. We, in our life, have 2 eyeballs, so we see things with dimension and can sense depth, but the camera can't sense depth. If you're traveling and you see a monument, you could stand beside it, put your arm out, and it looks as if you're the same height touching that monument that's actually much further in the distance. But it's just a trick of the single viewpoint of the camera that seems to compress those things and put them on the same plane.
In Dracula, the mansion is actually hanging in the air with an arm, so the mansion is suspended. And then there's the ground that slopes down, and if you bring it really close to the camera, then it appears like it's 250 yards away, even though it's a miniature. And then you can have the full-scale fence, the full-scale horses, and the carriage. In front of all of this, you can make it appear as if it's a mansion sitting there, 250 yards away.
They stop, they turn, he shoots, Seward gets hit, turn around, slash. Meanwhile, he slashes, knocks the thing out of hand, turn, fires back.
We shot all the Borgo Pass inside a soundstage. I think it was stage 15, the biggest stage around, so it was enormous, and we had a big oval track, basically, in which the set was designed with certain outcroppings of rocks and several matte paintings that gave different looks. Every trick in the book, and probably the last film that will do that. I mean, I hope that's not a true statement, but we made this film in '92, which is right when computer effects were blossoming. I think computer trickery is very useful, and I've done much of it myself, but It was just a wonderful last moment for a film made on that scale in Hollywood at the famous MGM studios, where they shot great classic films to go back to those traditions, and great classic films to go back to those traditions and really do it in the way it had been done. And that's something that I think of fondly.
We know what our biggest problem is. Our biggest problem is, why did they go to all this trouble to make that same story again? You've seen all this stuff.
Honestly, I have never seen a Dracula film before I got this job.
You want to give it this Escher-like, surreal, symbolist, kind of strange, impossible thing, and I don't even mind that they transmute one into another.
Francis called me up to ask me to do a costume design. I feel I'm a production designer. Then if I receive the production design work, I do costume also, because of the costume is be a very important part of the set design. At that time he said, Eiko, for Dracula, costume will be set. Set is going to be lighting.
I was going to lead with the costumes. I was going to put most of my money in the costumes, and I was going to diminish the sets and have the sets be more a highly imaginative use of space and shadow and like one set piece in a black void with a cloud projection, which is more the technique of a Citizen Kane even, and let the costume be the jewel of the set. Saw her work in Paul Schrader's wonderful film Mishima. She was the art director, and then she had even actually participated in doing some very striking Japanese graphics for the poster of Apocalypse Now. And then later on I looked at her work. She has a beautiful book out with lots of her graphics. I said, well, she's a talented visual artist, she can do costumes, and I just basically took a chance.
Dracula has a very cliché style, built long film history. So Francis, I wanted to completely throw away this cliché look to create our own vision, which is not looks like a man or a woman or old or young or beast or a human or what is this one? Francis quite interested to develop to Fallout idea. He hired me as a costume designer, but he's feeling like Eiko create entirely visual concept. This style. Some of the ideas based on Armadillo. Can you hold this? Or based on some strange insect.
Your diet, Mr. Renfield, is disgusting.
Actually, perfectly nutritious.
Or some of the wedding costume based on lizard. So quite a weird connection.
I know you were thinking also of making fabric designs based on red blood corpuscles and blood.
Yes.
Are you going to not do that?
I like to do that. I can show you a couple of directions of the idea. And I'm going to use more Byzantine color, more gold or some others. When the first time to have a meeting with him, he showed me all symbolism painters. Especially, he pointed to the famous Klimt painting, which titled The Kiss. Eiko, is it possible to realize this painting to one of the Dracula's costume? When I see Klimt painting, I could feel the very like oriental flavor with Western painting. I want to express hybrid culture, which is East meet West. My image of the Dracula should have a million faces. It's almost like endless transformation. Gary Oldman is a wonderful collaborator for my crazy design. But it's kind of like a process I have. Like first time he appeared in my place, he said, Eiko's best costume for me as an actor is t-shirts and jeans. I said, yes, I understand. For me, also, t-shirts and jeans, most comfortable costume in the human history. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's good. Knee cut. Oh, I like these.
That's that option.
This is yeah, I can act in this.
These plates connect.
I can do an emotional love scene in this suit.
Yeah, they connect on this.
This is the first appearance for Dracula's costume. So, Francis, I discussed it's a kind of sensational appearance for beginning of the movie.
I feel like a person still trapped within a car wreck. And they haven't quite got me out. The ambulance hasn't arrived yet. So.
I get you to hold still just a second, Gary.
Hold still, of course. I can't move in this. That's an occasion where actually the suit was wearing me, because I couldn't really do my thing.
He's just trying to feel out a position.
In the end, I tried to ignore the suit, actually, and just... I am not wearing this armor. I'm just going to do what I want to do.
His acting is so powerful and dynamic. The piece by piece, all my armor is falling down.
Ah, Jesus Christ.
Here we go, action!
I should decide. I want to use this snake scene, snake dress for a party, and very sexy.
Nice dress? Nice snake dress.
Is it really?
Then, so I should prepare the first dress for Mina, typing dress. And Mina is wearing this blue. Costume for Mina is a very strict, tight, conservative costume. Especially symbolized to a high neck and tied up to front. It's almost like really virginity or modesty or strict to a teacher's personality, and Lucy is completely opposite.
Practically a hat.
Would you like just a minute?
Yes.
I have chosen theme color for each leading roles. Lucy's is kind of like a vampire characters. And that sequence, she should be very, very erotic. And also at the nighttime storm, and I could imagine the house set is dark. So I wanted costume stand out under the very dark moonlight, Then I have chosen orange. It might be my first time to use orange in my history. I never use orange.
costume, you couldn't really do anything. I could put my arms up to there.
But the holding the babies looks more like a ghost. You understand?
Yeah. I just thought it'd be really interesting if when Lucy was a vampire, she'd have very animal-like moves herself. So I worked with a choreographer and I tried to find like ways of like moving like a lizard. And I thought it'd be really good to slide down the stairs on my stomach. Can't do that, Lion. I can't come back. Oh, yes, you can.
You can do that, yeah.
That's kind of weird looking.
When I've seen Sadie's rehearsal, I thought it's impossible. She cannot walk in the front. She's wearing my wedding costume, which is not comfortable like a t-shirts and jeans. And she's holding a very heavy child in her arm and walk down to a staircase with a huge train. So if Sadie cannot do with my elaborate costumes, I thought about I should change my idea for another way. Then I asked Francis, should I change? He said, no, keep it.
The director often is forced to look around and say, well, I don't have what I thought I was going to have, so what do I have, and how can I make use in an unusual way what I have?
Lucy!
In the case of Dracula, or I'd have her crawl on the floor like a snake and be said, well, the costume would not allow that to happen, and so then you have to think of something else that maybe gets at the same gist of what you hoped, but you have to do it in a new way. Sadie?
Yeah?
This is going to be your hardest thing you've been called upon to do. It's going to take all of your Olympic skill.
Okay.
You got to do it all backwards.
Okay. Should we just rehearse it and see what...
Here we go. Ready? You start sleepy. Action. Now you're a little more conscious and your eyes are looking at him sort of horrible. Right? And then you do all of this. Good. Very, oh, wow. Obviously, the costumes are extremely unusual, very beautiful, and when I said the costumes would be the set, I think that was fulfilled.
Suscríbete y toca la campanita, así podremos avisarte cada vez que haya un nuevo vídeo disponible.